Hey, this is Bobby, and thank you for checking in to 5 Minutes with KeRusso. I welcome you back. I hope that you're sharing these videos with other people. I hope that you keep tuned in this channel as we finish Ruth in this month of May and June. We're really going to get into some really good stuff that you're going to like. So start telling people about checking this channel out in June. It'll be worthwhile. And I'll tell you more about that as we get closer to it, okay? But right now we're discovering things in Ruth. And we have gotten into this journey into chapter 2. And I say journey, in several ways, there's a lot of movement in this book. It's a journey in a lot of different ways. You start off with Elimelech and Naomi leaving Bethlehem and going to Moab. Then you have Naomi and Ruth going from Moab back to Bethlehem. And even when they're in Bethlehem, there's movement. You have in chapter 2, you have Ruth going to a field where she meets this guy named Boaz. A lot of movement in this book. So they're on their journey, you're on your journey, we're taking a journey together, discovering something. I want to share with you something today about this guy, Boaz. We looked at him a little bit, but I just focus on him a little bit right now. His name means swiftness or strength. There's an interesting use of this name Boaz in the book of 1 Kings chapter 7. When Solomon builds this temple for God, he has two pillars on the front, and the right pillar he names Boaz. It's representative of who God is. Who is the God who lives in this building, who's going to dwell here? Well, he's strength. He's a God who acts and acts swiftly. He has power. Boaz has that meaning to it. And this guy that Ruth encounters in chapter 2 of the book is that kind of a guy. He's a pillar of the community. He's upstanding. He's outstanding. He's a fantastic man. He's a man of God. You see that reflected in all of his interactions with his servants, with Ruth. He looks to benefit them without seeking anything in return. You see in chapter 2 all the different things that he does for Ruth. And he does that with no ulterior motive. He does that because he knows, he finds out who she is, and he knows what she's done for her mother-in-law. And so he is willing to be God's resource to help her. He knows her precarious situation of being a foreigner there in Bethlehem. And so he's going to be, when he says to Ruth, "You've come and taken shelter under God's wings," he's willing to be the servant to provide for her that shelter, whatever she needs. And he gives her things that she doesn't even ask for. He's an incredible man. Well, the reason why I'm highlighting Boaz is for the story's sake. Ruth and Naomi need help. And so how do they get the help? Well, God provides it through Boaz. God could provide it in a lot of ways, but he chooses his man Boaz, his servant Boaz, to be this help. Now, if you think about us, what happens to us when we seek help from God? How does God help us? God is not limited in how he can help us. He can do all kinds of things in all kinds of ways. God is a God of power who moves swiftly, but how does he work? Sometimes he works through people like Boaz. There's a lot of Boazes that run around this world. Now, you may not feel like you've met any of them. You may live in a world where in your circle, there are people who are willing to help, but only if they get something out of it. I used to live in the Chicago area where in the wintertime there would be snowstorms, and people had chains and pulleys on their trucks, and they go around and pull people out, but only if they were willing to pay $50 or whatever the price they wanted. And if people weren't willing to pay, they'd leave them in the ditch and go on and find somebody else who would pay them. Well, the world is full of people like that who will help as long as they get something out of it. And maybe you've been burned by people like that. Maybe you've been helped by people, but then they expected something from you that took more out of you than what they should have never taken out of you anyways. And maybe they hurt you that way. But there are people, God's people, who are willing to help and eager to help with no ulterior motive in mind. And Jesus has raised up an army of disciples like that. and they're around you. So when you need help and you pray to God for help, don't be surprised if he sends you a Boaz. Now, it might be a man, could be a woman, could be somebody older than you or younger than you, but you'll know them because they're honorable, and you'll see how they treat other people, and you'll realize that they're helping you not because they expect something from you, but because they're God's servants. When you encounter people like that, receive them and accept them for who they are and be grateful for the blessing that you get from them. Who knows, one day God might use you to do the same thing for somebody else. All right, that's what I'm going to share with you today. We'll see you next Monday, and be blessed.